Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Mama Your Own Way. I'm Lily Coco, and today my guest is Lenora Edwards. We had her on a couple of weeks ago, and she's back again because last time we didn't get to all of her amazing tips, SLP information that we want to get from her because she has over 10 years of experience, works with better speech, and honestly, such an amazing lady. The first time we met was that podcast we did, and we connected so much. I have such admiration for her. I love her as a human being. So let's get chatting with her. Hello, Lenora.
How are you doing? It's so good to be here with you.
It's so good to see you. I love seeing your face. We talked about it last time, but I'm like, I just have this connection and this love and admiration for you because you have this genuine calming feel, like presence around you where I'm like, hey, maybe it's like a safety security thing where I'm like, I feel safe with you.
Oh, I love that. That makes my heart so happy.
I love that. I like to say that too. That things make my heart happy. Aw. Okay. How are you though? Let's catch up really quick, and I do want to jump into all the SLP stuff. But how are you? I feel like it's been ages, and I don't even like.
I know. I think it was almost a good 5 weeks since we last spoke, and that I felt the same way after we hung up. I was like, I need more of her in my life. Where did she go? Where do
you live?
I live in Pennsylvania.
I live in Tennessee.
Ooh, nice. I haven't been there yet. Next time I visit, I'll be sure to look you up so that we can see each other in person.
Right. Or I can come. You know what we're having right now is allergy season right now is in my backyard. Yeah. Oof. I know. Scratching, itchy. I aged my eyes by 5 years within the last 2 weeks of just scratching so much. I just know I'm like, there's no elasticity left in this skin because I'm just aggressively going after it.
My husband always comments, he's like, I've never seen somebody rub their eyes as aggressively as you because I'll get in there with the palm and I'm like,
I feel like
feels so good.
Right. It feels like I want to take a wire brush in there, just like, whew. But I know it's the worst thing you could probably do. Like that would probably be like a torture thing. But man, when I lived in California, I didn't notice the allergies so bad. But when we moved over here, it's spring because you can't even open your eyes because it's just happening.
Yeah, for sure.
Last time we talked, we didn't get into the SLP stuff, and I want to get into it. But I did want to touch on something because we talked about motherhood in general, but also just like humanity.
Yeah, we talked about so much.
We did, and I messaged you a little bit about this, but I wanted to share it with others because it was just like eye-opening. You sent me a meditation, which was beautiful.
Aww.
About you sent me two, so I don't know which one it was, and maybe it was both of them put together. But it was, I was concentrating and imagining and feeling the things that were kind of holding me back. I think it was the colors one, where you feel it, you kind of picture it out of your body, you accept it, and kind of let it go. And that was very moving. And then in the next couple of days, I was so overwhelmed. I was so anxious. I was like, and we talked about it, how a lot of people, self included, get in our head about it. And they're like, oh, I'm so stupid. I'm so dumb. I didn't get this done. I'm worthless. You hear that critic, that judge. And it was during nap time. So my daughter was laying next to me. We do contact naps still. And I was trying to get some work done on my phone, but I just needed to lay down. Like, I was just overwhelmed. I started to cry. Like, that's just how I felt. And then something happened. I heard myself say to myself, that's not you talking. And I was like, whoa, what's happening? And I almost imagined this like lap I was laying on, maybe my own lap in a sense, that I was laying in my own lap crying, and then myself was like petting me saying, you don't talk to yourself that way. That's something else talking. And then I heard myself say, that's a recording. That's a recording you're hearing from somewhere in the past. That's not you talking. And then I sound so crazy right now. And then I told myself, I said, that's right. That's not me talking. I don't talk to myself that way. I shouldn't talk to myself that way. Then I had a little epiphany of, my daughter likes to say, you can do hard things. Do one thing at a time. And now she tells me, do one thing at a time, mommy. So I heard her voice say that to me. while this is all happening, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I ever heard my daughter talk this way to her, it wouldn't be acceptable. I would never want her to know right now as she's laying next to me that I'm talking to myself that way. And so between hearing her and hearing myself that it's a recording, then I said, I just need to go and turn it off. I said, that's not me talking. That's a recording. Go turn it off. And I pictured myself standing up, walking over to this old school player, right, with like the tuba looking speaker up top. And I just turned it off. And then there was this like waterfall of weight that fell over me, because I'm like, oh my God, I've been listening to this recording. I'm almost 32. Next week I'm turning 32. For 32 years, I've been listening to this recording, believing it, that is the, accurate representation of who I am. And now to be able to understand that, whoa, I'm like in a movie and the narrator's talking, but that's not really what's happening. This is just a recording playing. And I have it now on my phone on my screensaver. That's not you talking. That's a recording. Go turn it off.
That's incredible. So the other work that I do, so as a speech pathologist, I help people communicate. And as the other part of the work that I do is I help people communicate not only externally, but also internally. So what you were doing is quite literally rewiring your subconscious so that the voices that you're hearing are serving you. Because the voices that you were not, or the voices that you were hearing were not serving you. And that beautiful, amazing, incredible experience that you just shared with everybody is so truly, deeply, absolutely incredible. And even when you're feeling lighter, that is quite literally your body releasing what it no longer needs. Sometimes we'll release it in tears or in sweats or in burps. And that is truly our nervous system rewiring itself. And when you feel lighter afterwards, you literally took what did not serve you and let it go, which is why you felt so much lighter. That was incredible.
An unbelievable out-of-body experience. And I tried to explain, because I was like, man, I got to share this with people, because if somebody's in this boat, I would love for them to feel better. And I tried to explain it, and it's like a 5-minute video that I was like, maybe I sound crazy, so I didn't post it. But
crazy.
I pictured myself, and I was in my own lap crying, and I was telling myself, it's okay. I was the parent and the kid, to be parented in the reparenting myself, saying, it's okay that you're crying. It's okay that you're upset. You don't owe anyone anything. And what you're hearing, that voice isn't you talking. You don't talk to yourself that way. You wouldn't talk that way to strangers, to a person I love, even to a person I don't like. I am very kind to people in general overall. So I'm like, how could I even be talking to myself? That's not me. That's not me. That's a recording I'm hearing. And to let that go, the following weeks, I don't remember being upset or triggered. Things were just kind of coming and going. And I think I'm getting a little overwhelmed in the last couple of days. And I think I just need to lay down and because that was just one step. It doesn't go away once. There's so many things that I need to get out of me, right? But like you were saying, I was able to communicate with myself. And it wasn't like, sometimes I'll say things to myself and they don't hold weight. They don't hold value for some reason. It's like, I know that I'm telling myself that, right? So it's like unbelievable almost. Whereas this was so true and honest, and it was life-changing. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, that's not me talking. To realize you can control that narrative because you are the writer of your own story. Life-changing. And then again, what do we want to take from it? We often talk that judge, that critic is the voice of our most critical guardian or parent. And then now I want to make sure I'm not passing those things to my daughter so that she has healthy self-esteem and healthy self-communication. But there's also a little bit of this idea that an acceptance of forgiveness in its actuality to the people who have wronged me. Because if they were only doing how they were taught and their parent was only doing how they were taught, none of them knew. It's like blind leading the blind, right? So it's like they didn't mean to.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you take the concept of you are the director, you are the writer, you are the producer of your life, there are voices that get put on our hard drives that we didn't necessarily want or aren't serving us. And for whatever reason, our nervous system catches them and we take them on as our own. So now as you go back and you notice, quite literally, there's this beautiful component called parts therapy. And we have different parts of ourselves. And in this case, the part that when you were saying you were on your own lap and you were also talking to yourself, you were talking to a part of you that needed healing, that needed to resolve, that needed to clear out what it no longer needed. And that's that incredible inner work journey that you do. And it's I find it to be a lot like a labyrinth where you're doing really deep inner work. And then here you keep leveling up to where you were the day before. So it's always between you and you. It's not that you're competing against other people. It's between you, the version you were yesterday, and the version you were today, or the version you were 10 years ago and the version today.
Right.
And the deeper you go, the more you grow. It's truly an incredibly profound experience to start to understand, okay, I have things about me that upset me. And when other people say something, it upsets me. I don't want to live in that way. So what do I need to resolve? What do I need to learn from this experience? And to go through that component of understanding that's a voice, and it could just be one voice, or it could be a culmination of voices that are on this recording of a critical inner authority figure. And to go in and start modifying those recordings is a profoundly moving experience. And when you then, over the next couple of days, you notice, whoa, I'm just responding differently. I don't feel that feeling anymore. I don't get that rush of emotion anymore. And you can observe it, which is great. And there's a complete rewiring of your nervous system that has happened. So now when those other things happen, the intensity that was there and that energy, you let go. So when things happen, that program of intensity is quite literally not running because it's no longer within you. It has resolved. And you've cleared away the program. You put away something else. You put in something better, something that's serving you, whether it's I love you or I will take care of you, whatever the case may be for that part. And now when you experience things, you experience them in a much different way. You quite literally understand, oh, it's not that they're hurting me. I can take this as it was meant and I can use it for good. And it's such a beautiful thing to truly go through. And I used to think I was going to just get to this one point where then everything would be perfect. And it truly is an ongoing, that's why it's like, I think like an inner labyrinth, the deeper you go, the work isn't done. It's an evolution of yourself. And it's such a beautiful thing to experience. And I encourage everybody to experience. And if you have questions or you find things about yourself that upset you, find people who you can learn from to help yourself. And that's the other component that I do. I work with clients one-on-one on that work because it was truly profound. When I was having difficulties, I was having anxiety, I was having a lot of eating issues overall. And as I started to do the work, things started to resolve completely. So now it's not that the work is done, it's that it's different work now for me. And it's truly life altering and life expanding in the best ways.
Yeah. You know what I also had to accept a little bit? I felt really tired. And they say that after like workout. Right. And I felt so tired. And then I was a little mad at myself. I'm mad because I'm tired. And then I had to be like, okay, no, it's okay. We're doing, it's emotional hard work.
Yeah.
And there's so much to it of accepting, because I think when triggers happen, the first thing we do is kind of look at the person or that immediate first thing that caused it. So whether it be a spouse, a family member, but usually there's an event that, repeats itself, occurs, a word that repeats itself. And so we want to put it on that person. And to, I guess, be humble enough to say, maybe it's not them, to say, maybe the problem is, why am I getting triggered by it? What's causing it? And to start looking within and digging. That's hard. That's
Very much
hard.
So.
That's
Emotional
really
intelligence
hard.
that is incredibly high. Because there are some people that are wanting to point that finger, but that emotional intelligence, of which I think we're starting to experience culturally an evolution of people understanding to a certain degree. I get what's mine. I know what's yours. Understanding how to actually set boundaries, understanding that when somebody says something, how do they mean it, and analyzing it and understanding and separating it and going, okay, that's on you. This is on me. And this is how I know. Because, when we were younger, at least for me, I didn't really understand boundaries. I didn't really understand self-talk. These weren't things that they were talking about as I was growing up because nobody was talking about them. Now people are starting to talk about it. People are having conversations about it. And it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
I saw this video that I thought was really interesting. Are you familiar with ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Right. So somebody had asked GPT if, I think it was something in the works of the end of humanity, or how could, and the ChatGPT responded the way you can win at humanity and become a better person is if you rewrite your code. And the person said, how do I rewrite my code? I said, well, within humans, it would be in your database, kind of within your computer, which would be our subconscious, right? And it's hard to go into a code and rewrite something if you cannot see it. Usually we can see what's conscious, what's in front of us, what we can observe, right? And even as babies, we have to put things in some sort of categories. And subconscious really doesn't go into a category because we don't even notice that we're talking to ourselves. We're not even hearing that these voices are happening. It seems as a part of reality almost. And so it talked about how you can rewire yourself, re-download it if you access and it talked about meditating or finding those pieces. And it was really interesting to see it set as that code writing machine, because we are indeed our own computer. But I remember in grade school somewhere, we did a computer class. I did a coding class, really simple coding. It's not anything. But you write commands. So if this, do this. When this happens, then now do this. If this event occurs, this is the way you react. If this happens, you blamed yourself, so now you continue to blame yourself. If somebody said this, that means that you are that person, right? And so we take on of these commands as rules that we have to then follow, because that's the only thing we know, and usually happens in our childhood, because that's how when we learn to be human, right? Yeah. But the relationship and interactions we're really observing, we're watching these comments happen, so then we know what to say next. And so in our young little mind, all of this coding really happens. And to be able to find that floppy disk where this was once written somewhere, and then you're I can't even put this floppy disk in this new computer. There's no way to access it. Finding the ways to realize, hey, this is somewhere in me. How do I dig a little bit? Where do I find it? How do I really let go? Because like I said, when I let go of that, I was whoa, like a snake shedding its skin. I'm a whole new snake now. I don't want to be a snake. But a whole new version of you, a rebirth almost. Yeah. Right. And it's how many more am I going to have? I wish I would have done these sooner, but let's accept I'm doing my best. So this is where I started my journey, and that's okay. Yeah. But being able to get there, and then my always thing, I always say, is, okay, how do I help my daughter write clean code, but also know where to find it and access it? Because things are going to happen that are going to be out of her control, out of my control, out of other things that I want her to know she's always safe in my home and within her space. So what can I do to make sure that her communication with herself is healthy?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So when we're born, we are born with the ability to understand language, but we come in with an understanding of, as we're moving about our environment, we understand fabrics, we understand sounds, we understand textures, we understand colors. And then language gets added in a different way. So our nervous system quite literally is wired for textures and sounds and colors. Language is another component that does come in. Once we start to add meaning, we really don't know the difference between a spoon and a fork. When we start to add meaning to the words that we're talking, our brain will start to interpret language and what does it mean. And we can also understand the tonality of our speech. So this is why when children hear, they understand the difference between mommy being upset and mommy being happy. Children understand the difference in tonality because there's a different energy coming in. And that is a great thing to understand. Once we start talking to our children, it's important to understand and to also offer to them as much support and guidance as possible. And it is quite literally a lot of work to reframe and to talk to them in a way that's supportive for them, because they come in and they are working to understand everything from the time of conception to 7 or 8 years old, depending on the research. It says 6, 7, or 8 years old. They are in a completely different brain wave length, and they're quite literally in a hypnotic state all the time.
Wow.
So they're experiencing things, and as they experience things, our nervous system is wired to also delete, distort, and generalize. So it'll take information and it'll store it over here. You go over here, you go over here, you're associated here, you're associated here, you're associated here. So for example, when we're doing that, this is a lot of the times when you're in the middle of a fight or when something happens. Let's say I've been driving since I was 16 years old. So the first time somebody cut me off in traffic was like, oh my God, it startled me.
Right.
Now, at almost 38, I have a number of years of driving under my belt. So when somebody cuts me off, it's not just that one event at 38, they're cutting me off. It is all of those years that have happened before that this program is being responded. So this is why you go from 0 to 60 really quickly, because it's not just one event, it's all of these programs, because that's how we are wired. When you experience something, your nervous system goes, whoop, store it in this file, whoop, store it in that file. So that's why we experience things more intensely and more intensely. This is why people will go 0 to 60 in a fight, because it's not one fight. It's not that one moment. It is everything that the nervous system understands about fighting, and here it's coming at somebody in a disagreement. So that can be really challenging, and that's where that emotional intelligence of knowing how to respond. And also the other thing is, when we think about willpower, we're thinking about 5% of our mind. We're 5% conscious. 95% is unconscious. We're not thinking about all of these other things that are going on. As we're communicating, we are doing our best to stay in this moment. Our subconscious is offering us additional information, additional support to justify what we're talking about or what we're doing in that moment. So there's quite a bit going on. When it comes to children and wanting to raise them in that supportive environment, we also have to raise them with the understanding of when you hear this, when I say don't cross the road, you need to respond and not cross the road, and understanding that boundaries are okay and firm voices are okay when they're in the appropriate setting and not just willy-nilly all over the place. And because sometimes if parent or guardian is not in a great mood, then they might be unpredictable to that child. That child doesn't know how to respond. So when they're unpredictable, the child becomes increased sensitivity to, I need to people please. I need to do my best because I don't know who I'm going to get where they are for whatever response. And this is why we're seeing a lot more people coming out sharing that they're people pleasers, or they didn't know how to survive. They did the best they could in that very unstable, uncertain environment when somebody was running off the handle of whether they were in a good mood or bad mood or whatever it was. It was just very inconsistent emotional control. at the same time, people before us didn't have the knowledge that they have now for that emotional control. So that's where we're getting into this evolution of understanding our emotions and understanding how we communicate. And when we're communicating, understanding that I might be in a bad mood, but how to not take that bad mood out on my child. Now, I'm not saying anything physical or anything, but quite literally in the, can you just hurry up?
Right. The agitation tone. Yes, right.
Absolutely. And knowing how to keep your nervous system calm. This is another great reason why meditation and journaling and doing that inner work are so important, because you're doing your best to stay emotionally stable and consistent and to live in joy and to live in feeling good as much as possible. Yes, other things will happen, but to understand that you need to take care of yourself, quite literally, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever you'd like to label it under, in order to take even better care of those around you, because it's a lot being human. It's a lot. Hands down, it's a lot. Especially with the stimulation that we have coming in from other people and then other devices and then work-related things. It's a lot, and it overwhelms the system. So we have to quite literally learn practices to take care of ourselves to the best of our ability so that we can function in a peaceful way, in a pleasant way, in a joyful way with those around us.
I love that so much. I think last time we talked about, you mentioned a number about how much communication is nonverbal. Was it like 70%?
Upwards of 70. So there's even some research that says 90. So we're communicating with our tone and our face and our energy. There's so much going on, and that's not what we're consciously aware of.
Right. But you can see that forming in children, right? Because they might not know what a word means, but they will see the way you are behaving, and they'll understand circumstances that are surrounding them, right? And then as those events keep happening, it becomes history to that thing. It's like, oh, well, when this happens, right? Because I was thinking more about words. I think something I take personally is wrong words often, because I'm like, well, why would you say, and I think because when you learn a language, you really know a definition to it. So then you attach the definition to the word, and, that's the rule. So you hold the rule. But then language is all made up. The words we're saying right now is made up. Like, they chose that these words are going to mean this, and we all said sure, and we said this is a coffee cup and this is a straw, but in a different language, that's not what those words even, right? The characters, the letters of our words aren't even real, because across the border they could speak a different language, and so what you're saying, it doesn't translate. But what we do pick up on is that the nonverbal part of the communication is the body closed. Because if someone's running at you, kind of swinging, but they're saying, I love you.
Yeah.
Right? You got to learn how to protect yourself. And
very much so.
It's just so interesting to me how much of it we grasp in those early years, right? That really defines where our arrow is going to go, of how much power, self-will, confidence, encouragement, or pity, victimhood, that will fuel a rocket.
Very much so. And, it is the environment that you experience that you're shaped in. But then at a certain point, my mentor says this to me very often, once you become 18, you are now considered an adult. You have the right and the authority and the responsibility to shift anything else about yourself that you want, or about your environment that you want. And once you hear that and you find, I'm going to put myself back in the driver's seat, or I'm going to take control now, and I'm going to start choosing things differently. I choose to choose my thoughts. I choose to focus on the positive. I choose to take care of myself in a different way. I choose to change the recording in my head and to start looking for answers to the questions. I had so many questions, and this was going back many years. And before smartphones, we had our regular internet, thankfully. And I started looking stuff up on the internet, looking for answers to my questions. And the journey got better and better. Yes, there were parts that were very hard, because when you're going through your subconscious and you're trying to figure out why you have a terrible relationship with food, or why you have this really weird relationship with money, like you want more of it, but then you think about money in a certain way. These are conflicting beliefs. Just like you want to eat, but then you're afraid to eat. These are conflicting beliefs, and there's something else going on. And when you can start looking at them, especially when you work with a coach or if you work with whomever you want to work with, it becomes not you're the problem. It becomes, we have a problem. Can you help me look at this? And I think that is the massive, profound difference of understanding I'm the problem versus I'm okay. I have a bunch of problems.
Right.
Can you help me with them? I don't know what to do. And I really also didn't understand the concept of asking for help. I thought asking for help for me meant that I was stupid and that I didn't know things. Once I started to say, okay, maybe there's something I don't know, and that's okay. So who can help me with that?
Right.
And I started to work with different people to figure out who I liked working with, who I liked learning from, and who could help me.
Right. There's so much in that choice. And I think something you mentioned, like kids, let's say up to 16, get told no and they can't do something so often that it does build up. So when it happens, a lot of times we can see a rebellion because they're finally like, I can do all of these things. And then it's like unsupervised almost rebellion where they're learning from themselves, which is important to do. But and more I wanted to talk about, because like you said, the asking for help and learning how to actually say it.
Yeah.
Like that's hard. And nobody taught me, but I want to make sure our kids get taught that. That's like, it's okay to ask for that help. And I think we talked about within the SLP where I want to make sure parents always feel confident that they can ask for help. There's nothing wrong with their parenting. There's nothing wrong with their kid. So you said those problems aren't us. And it was like a light bulb for me when you said that, where I'm like, that's what I do. I identify myself with the problem. I become the definition, or the problem becomes the definition of me, and I become one with it. But I'm not the problem. I'm carrying this backpack that I put away, this like boulder of an event, and now I just need to like paint on this boulder, drop it off, give it to somebody else, go put it near a lake, like whatever, right? But like, I don't need to keep it. It's not mine to keep. It's okay to let go of that. And to then ask for help and assistance to help figure out where to put that boulder or rock. That's hard to do.
Very much so. And the importance of asking for help, especially when it comes to whether you're asking for help for yourself or for your child or for whomever, to understand that there may be people that come across in a less than positive way. Well, what do you need help with that? Well, what did you do that for?
Sure.
That's a shaming. That's a guilting way. That's not the person that you're wanting to match up with. When it comes to, especially when you're asking, like, I'm having difficulty with this, can you share some knowledge? And that's their response. That tone of how they communicated to you, that's on them. How you respond with that tone of going, okay, I didn't like that tone. I'm going to have to go find somebody else because clearly you're not my person. That's on you. And that's the delineation between the two of saying like, well, I don't think I deserve to be treated like that. No, you didn't, hands down. Either way, just not your match. It was a clear signal that that was not your match that you're looking for. So now, especially when you're working with a speech pathologist or any therapist, anybody at some point, when I work with clients, we have a problem. My client isn't the problem. Their child isn't the problem. There is a problem, though. How can we help? How can we be of service? And that's the most important thing, is being able to say, okay, there are a number of ways that we can go about solving this. Which ones look like potentials? Which ones really look like they're going to be super helpful for me right now? And I know that's more of a general statement, but that when you can look at it out in front of you and look at it for what it is, rather than identifying it as going, oh my God, it's me. No, it's not me. It's out in front of you. Or it's not your child. It's out in front of your child. Look at it that way. that will give you much more flexibility in saying, okay, how might we go about solving this? Who might I be able to call in? And that's truly important, because when parents come to me, whether they're coming to me for speech therapy or when clients come to me, I always tell them, it's okay. We're going to work on this. We're going to look at it together. We're going to figure out what's going on, especially when you have parents coming to you for speech pathology services or speech therapy services. They're coming in such an urgency, and they're already feeling a lot of blame and shame on themselves of, I did something to my child. I did this. And I tell them, you didn't do anything wrong. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean that you don't know how to parent. You're doing a great job. This is simply where we are. And my role is to figure out additional ways on how we can get you to where you want to go, how we can help your child, and who else might be able to help your child. That's the most important, is being of service and offering that service to them.
I love that. I think that's definitely where I struggle, is identifying with the issue at hand. And what I want to work on is when I hear a statement in a tone that I don't like, where it makes me feel belittled or not good enough, or that was a dumb idea, to like grasp it as is. It's like, it was just a statement, and it's probably coming from the person. If it's coming from love, maybe they're worried because they want to make sure you're really secure in life, so they want you to have the comfortable job that's more secure because they love you. And so the way that's coming off, the comment sounds like the career you're choosing is terrible, so you're making a terrible choice. But they're just expressing their love through their way.
Yes.
But I think the words shame and guilt are the big words that I identify with. And I think we see in the way we were parented, where it's like, if you didn't do something, you were bad, right? Like there was labeling of when you weren't good enough or didn't do things. And so that guilt and that shame kind of then grows into our adulthood.
Yeah.
But I love that we're helping the kids. Like, I kind of love the internet for this, because like we said, people before us didn't have the resources, whereas now we are open to so many resources, sometimes too many resources. But we do have these resources to help in general.
When it comes to those voices, so I learned this when I studied neurolinguistic programming, and as the director, as the recorder, as the perceiver of this voice coming in, you can actually play with that voice. So when you hear a recording, go in and think, now, if this person had the voice of Mickey Mouse, how might that sound? If this voice sounded like Goofy, what might that sound like? Right. And as you do, so you're smiling, as you notice the intensity completely changes. It's a feeling that it's triggering. So when we can change the recording, when we can even, sometimes, you'll have whatever negative thought or person is coming up, and they're really, really close in front of your face, move them back, shrink them down to a teeny tiny size of a postage stamp, and send them clear across the way, however far you want, whatever feels great for you. And notice how that feeling completely left, because it's the feelings that are driving the boat. And they're they're eliciting an emotion from us. So when we can change the feeling, we can change the emotion. And that is so much better.
It's so scary to me, the fact that we all just kind of live our lives driven by feelings and emotions, right? Like a lot of choices that we make, when I think of that analogy, right, I'm like, oh, I heard the voice, there was an interaction, then I did this following action, this whole cause and effect within the communication. But imagining, like, putting a silliness to it and deflating it completely, when you're just like, oh, it's just words. But what if like a fish said it underwater? Yeah. That'd be silly. Yeah. So it's nothing but silly. Like,
so we have pictures and voices, and this is how we perceive the world. So when you can start to play with those recordings, it becomes so much better. And it's an art. It's not something that will just immediately overnight. If it does, that's great for you. It didn't for me, so power to you if it does overnight. But it becomes an art. And when you can start to notice this and say, oh, what if I change the emotion? What if I change the recording to change the emotion that I'm getting? You get back in the driver's seat, and then you can quite literally perceive whatever it is you want. And if people are saying, well, why don't you take that stable career, or why don't you do this? And you're like, that again, it's hurtful to us. And we have this great emotional response of being human, and it is hurtful to us. And it's not to say that it's not hurtful, but then you can separate and say, okay, that's on them. That's how they perceive the world. To have a stable career, to know where your predictable paycheck is coming from, that's what works for them. This is what works for me. And being able to separate that and understand, like, thank you for your input, I appreciate it. I'm going to put it in my collection box over here, and that's where it'll stay, because I don't need to adopt this and think I'm not good enough because I'm not having a salary and I'm working by somebody else's standards. That's a value and criteria of that person. This is what's important to me. And that's when you start to be able to separate that and to not take it on as our own. It is that extra thought process of thinking about it and saying, okay, that's what's important to you. What's important to me? And that's where your power is. When you can start to respond in that way, you start to shift those feelings, you start to have better emotions, and you get back in the driver's seat.
I love that so much. I'm trying to picture it, how can we help our kids understand this at a young age? Because as a parent, it's often, I need you to listen to me, right? And when we say, I hear parents sometimes like, oh, my kid's not listening to me, they didn't do this. I'm like, well, they're not, you're saying they're not obeying, right? They probably listen, they heard you. They're not obeying is what you're expressing. And then there's that control shift where it's like,
I'm the parent.
Right. Which is important when it comes to a safety or a dangerous situation. It's totally important. They absolutely should know. Like if they're running across the street and you need to get them, there's a car coming, it's a situation, like 400%. Like do what you need to.
Totally.
Safety is always first.
Totally.
But I am thinking about, okay, how do I present this way of thinking to my daughter now where she feels responsible? She does this cute thing right now where she picked up the word decided. She goes, I decided to sit here. I decided I'm going to go over. Like, great decision. I love it. Isn't that so? She came in. I decided to sit here. Okay, sweetheart. Yes, more of that. Right? But I don't want to swim way too far with it, because then it's like, we're still a household, and I am the parent and the guardian. I do need to be in control, because if I let her just go wild, so then it's maybe finding the safety where it's like, hey, when we set some sort of rules, boundaries, that if it's a safety situation, hey, this is a keyword. When I say banana muffin, everybody listens to me because it's an emergency, right? And maybe give them that, because I'd love for kids to learn that ability, but it would be hard to do it or ask parents to do it in a way where they feel, I don't want them to feel powerless, because there's going to be times that come in, they need to, so it's maneuvering that way of helping our kids feel responsible and accountable. I guess if you just model it, if you model the,
Absolutely.
Right?
That and on a daily basis, if I decided to sit here and she's sitting in front of the TV during dinner time, and you guys usually have dinner at the family table. Okay, well, I'm glad you decided that, but right now we're going to do this because this is where we have this, and redirecting and justifying, because once we say, because I said so, it doesn't have enough justification, because they're like, well, what about me? Because you also told me to make my own decisions, and that can be really confusing. So when we say we're going to do this because, we're offering them that justification of, yes, obviously we're the parent, we're the guardian, we're taking care of them, but it's because this is where we have dinner and it's important to us. Because this is what we do, and this is important because, why do I have to get in the tub? Well, it's important because we're covered in dirt and we were outside, and we want to make sure that we get to go to sleep in a nice clean, when we're nice and clean, and go to bed that way. that's offering them additional support, because that will make sense to them. Oh, do you want to sleep in mud? And to also offer that ongoing encouragement of supportive nurturing, and knowing when to use your firm voice and knowing when to use your gentle voice, and building that ongoing trust. When children can't predict to some extent how you'll respond, that puts them into a survival mode of, I don't know what to expect, so maybe I just need to really, and they get really, really guarded. If you look at it as your child and you are in a building, trusting relationship, and every day you build your trust, just like we do with our significant others. Every day we build that trust. Every day we're showing up for them to the best of our ability. Some days we show up great. Woohoo! Some days we show up less than great. It's okay. It's to the best of our ability. So to always also have compassion for yourself and kindness for yourself that says, I'm doing the best. It's okay. And saying, if you do snap at somebody, I apologize. I didn't do that on purpose. Sometimes it happens, and I'm really sorry about that. And honoring that sincere response, and to never say it's going to happen again, probably unlikely. We're human.
Yeah.
Be okay with being human, but also hold yourself to that standard that says, I'm doing the best I can. And maybe today wasn't great, but I will do my best tomorrow. Yeah. And I will keep going from that standpoint. And having those open discussions with children of expressing, what did you think would happen there? How might you have responded? If you're in a storybook and somebody, there's a conflict in the storybook, how else might we have responded? What else do you think we could do? And asking those questions throughout their entire life will help them understand thought flexibility, will help them perceive, oh, this was the problem. Here are additional solutions. Mommy said she was going to do this. Daddy said he was going to do this. And I think I'm going to do this. And just giving different insights are all building this beautiful language foundation, but also this beautiful thought process of being able to think in different ways, and right. to have that supportive inside, because now I have thought flexibility. I wasn't told I was right or wrong. I was told, oh, I had this perception, and oh, somebody supported it. Oh, they had a really good one, and I supported them too. It's a back and a forth.
I love that. I'm a big fan of explaining and over-explaining because of my trauma, but I think it helps me in parenthood where I explain everything to her, where now I'm noticing when she comments about something, she'll explain why she got to that idea, right? So it's like, oh, it rolled off of this, it'll roll off of this, let's see if it'll roll off of that. Mommy, is it gonna roll or is it gonna get stuck like the other one? Let's find out together. And so including that including the explanation of why things happen, we do this, we do that. Plus, I think it's super helpful in redirection where, like, let's say they're jumping on the couch. You don't want them to jump on the couch. Instead of saying, don't jump on the couch, we don't jump on the couch. Mommy doesn't jump on the couch. Grandmas don't jump on the couch because we want to be safe. Wouldn't want anybody to fall off. But let's jump over here. I can set up a little cushion over for you. You want to jump in, jump out. But saying, we don't do this. Not just saying you don't do this because then it separates you, right? But it's like, we don't do this as humans, like in general. Like, you're new here. Let me show you around, right?
I love
but it's showing them those expectations, because sometimes I think if it was like at a job and you just got hired, but nobody tells you what to do or what you're allowed to do or where you eat or where the snack room, where do you take a break, why you park here. Like if nobody tells you, you're just going to start doing stuff, but then get in trouble because nobody told you. Like that's not fair. Right? And I think that it's a big importance also in that flexibility where it's not just white and black. You're wrong, you're right, you're terrible, or you're good. It's things happen, and there's different things we can do about them. Hey, let's talk about different things we can do. And that opens up this like freedom of, okay, I'm not making mistakes. I'm not a terrible person. This isn't like awful and bad. It's just like, okay, this happened. How do we problem solving, I guess.
Absolutely.
I also want to spend a few minutes on maybe some because I think a lot of this is a great foundation, how you do speech and communication at home, right? Not only like actually speaking, but also that nonverbal communication and helping our kids really strive, like give them really all the tools that they could possibly need. But let's spend a few moments if you had to. Oh, you know what? One of my friends that just had a baby. No, one of my friends, her sister just had a baby, like literally 2 or 3 days ago. And so she was like, "Come meet the baby." You know, she's excited. She's the aunt, and I'm like, "I'm gonna give you guys a few weeks to adjust. It's a really hard, like everything's brand new."
Yeah.
And she asked about something, so it made me. I gave her some tips that she asked about, and it made me think of like, whoa, babyhood, like newborn, mine's too, seems so long ago. It's like, I don't even think of those things, right? But I remember in that moment when you're just right in it, you're just like, I don't know if I'm going to survive. I don't know if I'm going to make this. Is this going to keep going forever? What am I even doing? And that kind of stretches, I think, for the first 2 years. And maybe on, because it's like, what are we all doing?
It could definitely do that for sure.
Yeah. But it made me think of like, man, starting as a fresh new baby, right? And you're just so new and young. And you don't know
I love
anything.
what you said. Oh, you're new around here.
Oh, you're new around here. Hey, are you new around here?
Amazing thing to point out.
Well, it's true. Like, they are so new. And I often think of, like, the party example where if your friend invites you to a party, you don't know anyone. So you're just going to stand next to them, right? Because, like, you don't even know why you're here. But if your friend leaves, you're going to be like, oh, my God, I'm all alone. And so I think that's how babies are with moms, right? They're just like, okay, Mom, we're at this party, but, like, what's going on here? Like, what is that? That makes noises. That does water. Like, I don't know who these people are. And they can't see when they're first, right? It's like they can only see when Mommy's up close and they can smell her, and everything else is like, it'd be terrifying if you don't know what noises and sounds were happening around you at all times. Like, that would be terrifying to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a couple of studies, one in particular that stands out, and it's why nurturing and loving and holding a child is so important, because it quite literally helps them integrate into this experience, into being here. And there was once a study that was done that eons ago, quite honestly. And this person, I think it was a king or an emperor of some sort, believed that children just learn language on their own, that they're not actually born with, that they're born with it and that they don't have to cultivate anything. And because they weren't held, they were only fed and changed, they weren't talked to. And then another group of children were fed, were cared for, were taken care of. And the children that were not taken care of did not survive. And it quite literally is truly important to nurture and to support and to hold that baby as they're growing in those early months, because they have no idea what's going on. And that nervous system quite literally is working to survive, but also needs that energetic, loving component of being cared for, of being picked up, of being held.
Right. Well, I go into a panic mode, right? It's a safety thing. If I don't feel safe, my entire body's working on the way of like, if somebody pops out, do I need to do, right? It's like you're just going through all of these what ifs. Right. It's the scariest thing to do, even in like physicality of things, like starting a new job, moving to a new place, because we don't know what's going to happen. It's the unknown that's so scary.
You're completely blank when you're born, when you're a baby. For the most part, almost nearly blank. But
Right. It would be terrifying. And so it's hard to learn on top of that or absorb anything in, because you're spending so much time just like, I don't know where I'm going to be today. Sometimes I'm on this mat, sometimes on this thing. I don't know if I'm going to fall off. Things are moving. I don't even know these are people. Right? Yeah. It's like, this is a dog, but my mom doesn't look like that. She doesn't even have a tail. Like, I don't even know. Right? It's like, what's this hot box?
Language for that, yeah.
Right. It's like food appears. I don't know, but now they're yelling at me because I'm chewing. But they always give me stuff to chew. So why is it? Why did it change now? I just feel so bad. Like to be not able to really express yourself or name things and be so unsure and unknown. It's just hard. Like it's just man. But like you said, like if they're loved and they're secure and safe and they don't have to worry about it, they can, oh, what's this? What's that?
They understand that there's something there taking care of them. They might not have a name for you or anything, but they understand that something is taking care of them. Something is keeping them safe.
Right.
For babies. Very uncertain in those first.
It'd be so hard. It's hard already when you go to a new town and you're an adult, but it's like, how do I make friends? How do I go? Where's the thing? You get stuck on a road. Everybody knows it's this road, but you didn't know that the light worked. This, whatever. Like simple things, but it's already difficult to not be able to communicate is hard. We're going to do, what about, okay, I feel like we didn't, this is all speech language pathology that's going to help, but I keep feeling bad that we don't like fully dive into it.
There's so many things. I'll come back another time. That's great.
I want to have you back on. I'm going to have a weekly session with you, like self-discovery and humanity and living, because there's just so much into it. And I think
so much.
As we talk about like how we heal ourselves, you know, and how can we help our kids not have to go through the same process, you know, there's still going to be things they're going to have to do. But if I often think of like, if I wasn't spending my time right now cracking away at this like iceberg, just seeing what the heck the statue is going to look like on the inside later, I would be having a lot more time to learn or do more things or pick up a language or, you know, whatever. And so there's so much weight and importance to it because it's like, oh, we could save them 30 years. Right.
There's quite a bit, for sure.
They can make the world a better place.
Yeah, they will make a world a better place. They're also on their own experience of learning and how they'll evolve and grow. So I at least that to me is my personal opinion of we are here having our own experience, and we're all doing the best that we can. And they're going to have their beautiful genetic coding imprint from the combination of where they came from and how they're going, what skills are in their coding and what things they'll develop over their life and how they'll perceive things and how they'll interact in the world, I think is truly a beautiful thing that continues to offer nurturing and support, because we want what's best for them, and what's best for them is what they want and how they want to live their life. And that is truly the gift that parents and guardians are giving children is, I'm going to do my best to give you a really strong foundation and to love you and to support you. And then you get to choose, just like we've all gotten to choose.
I love that. I love talking to you.
I could talk to you for days, Lily.
Right? Sometimes I just get a pop-up question. I just had another question pop up that I want to discuss, and I'm like, that's going to send me discussing it for another 20 minutes, and we got to jump off. But I'm like, I get excited, and I think there's so much to discover as like humans are, you know, what we're discovering now within ourselves. And I'm also excited in like 10 years, right? Because there's going to be these new advances and new things, and how much deeper and how much more knowledge maybe our kids will even have, and like resources that they're going to be able to tap into. Because we're already like looking at the previous generation, we're like, oh wow, like, right, like what were they doing? And we feel we're advanced compared to that, but our kids are going to be looking, saying,
even look at our grandparents and what they experienced. Like, you know, so my parents are, my dad's actually turning 70 today.
Oh, happy birthday.
I know. Thanks. I'll let him know. And just what they experienced, and then what their parents experienced, you know, the evolution of where we are is magnificent if you think about it.
Right.
You know,
it's also how because it's in DNA coding, our parents first just had to survive, right? So it's like to make sure there was food and actual roof and shelter. And a lot of parents today, we still have to do things it's survival. Like we're calling it just paying mortgage, but like those are your
safety. It's survival. Yeah.
Right.
You need a roof over your head.
Right. And so there's a lot of triggers there and a lot of stress and pressure, but it makes sense, you know, with more evolution and more like technology and education, although it's getting a little out of hand. I don't know about this ChatGPT where it's like passing all tests, doing this stuff. I'm like, it's running companies now.
Yeah.
So it's like, whoa.
It's very interesting where it's going. Extraordinarily interesting. And I don't know, I don't think you remember, I don't know if you experienced it, AOL dial-up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So,
oh, yeah. No,
so
yeah.
It's impressive. And, you know, with great power, you know, we do have to be careful of how we use this. And there are people who will want to use it in a great way and people who might not want to use it in a great way. And fingers crossed that it works out for all of humanity.
Right.
Because
I'm
sometimes
worried.
it can get really scary out there.
Right, because now everyone's writing their blogs using it, right? So it's like, okay, well, this wasn't even written by a human. It was written by this internet. So how can I believe it? But yet, it probably has more information than the human would have had, right? Because it's scanning all the data. So essentially, it's like the smartest and most trustworthy source. But that seems odd, right? Because it's like, then who do we trust? Who's writing whose words?
Yeah, I like it. So far, this is the way that I look at it. I know my fields. I know my areas of expertise, and I know what I know. So now when I plug something in and I see a summary written about it, I read through it and I go to verify it. And if I don't like something, if it's not in agreement with me, okay, no problem. That's my right, my responsibility to remove that and to modify it how I want it written. So I look at it as a tool, just like I look at a hammer or a screwdriver. It's a tool. I have the ultimate say over what gets developed, what gets put out, whether it's a house or a blog or something. So that's the way that I like to think of it. Hopefully other people will still look at it and review it before sending it out there, but you never know.
Right. I think it's a great tool because it's like a personal assistant, right? Because it's like, I just need like this in work, and then you arrange it because you're like, oh, well, almost. But like if you had an assistant, you'd be like, just draw down those notes, right? It's like easy peasy. I'm going to finish up our show because it's time.
Thank you for having me again.
But I love you, and I'd love to have you on again. I'm going to turn this off, and then I'll say a few words really quick to you as well. But thank you for having us on, being on with me.
Having me. Thank you for having me.
And how can people reach you? I'm going to have you back on the show. We'll schedule it after this. But if people wanted to talk with you more, how can they reach you?
Very specifically about the stuff that we covered today, I would say dtvhorizons.com. And DTV stands for Determined to Be Horizons.com.
Thank you, Lenora. Thank you. I'll say bye now. I'll say quick.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, listening. I love Lenora so much. I can't wait to have her on again. I hope everyone has a beautiful, beautiful weekend. If you go outside, take your allergy medicine so you're not scratching your eyes out like me. And have a good weekend. I love you.